Welcome to my session called Abusing Teams, Privacy, Security and Compliance. And my name is Dr. Nestori Syynimaa. I'm an MVP and I recently started at SecureWorks as a Senior Principal Security Researcher. And here's a slide about me. That's me there. And as I told you, my name is there. And from what I think best known is that I'm a creator of AAD Internals Toolkit. I'll come back to that later. And my contact details, the most important thing here is that you can see that, actually I haven't started my Zoom, so just a second. Yes, so the most important thing is here, my Twitter handle, Dr. Azure AD. So just follow me on Twitter, and I'm tweeting about a lot of security stuff, mainly related to Azure AD or Microsoft 365 services. Yes, so I only have like 40 minutes. So I'll try to manage that time frame. I have two subjects to cover today. So first one is extracting Teams content as a guest user. So that's the first one. And second one is bypassing Teams policies, or actually security settings, not policies, but yeah. And I mentioned that I was creator of this AAD Internals PowerShell module or toolkit, and it is a script-based module, which means that everything is plain text there. So if you want, you can just open the source files and you can modify them and even add or embed those to your own scripts. And I wanted to do it that way so that it would be easier for you to know what's going on under the hood, and also it's easy for you to learn how things are working when you can see the actual the source code there. And what AAD Internals is, it's a Azure AD and Microsoft 365 admin and hacking toolkit, so you can do a kind of administrative tasks that's otherwise not possible or not supported. And also it has some hacking functions like I've been presenting in other conferences. And it's open source, so you can go there and you can see the source code. And there is the help in my blog, 365blog.com/AAD internals. So there's a lot of examples and all the functions that are included in the module. And I also wanted to make it quite easy to use and install. So it's also available in PowerShell Gallery. So you can just say install dash module AAD internals and then import the module and you are good to go. And actually yesterday I published the latest version 0.4.8, which is also known as Teams Nation Edition. So I fixed one functionality related to Teams, which is sending Teams messages. There was a bug for some reason, I don't know. It used to work, but it didn't anymore. So please, if you want to try something I'm showing today, please update for the latest module. Okay, so then to the first subject, which is extracting Teams content as a guest user. Last summer, I published a let's say framework called Azure AD and Microsoft 365 kill chain, and as you can see, there's a lot of PowerShell commands there, and I kind of tried to create a matrix that would be easier for you to understand that in which kind of phases the functionality I've created in AAD internals is used for. And this is following the, let's say, standard kill chain in a way that each column here is representing a phase in kill chain. So the first one is recon, when you are trying to gather information. And then the compromise is that when you want to compromise something or you have compromised the environment, what you can do, and then how to get persistence or persistent access to organization, and then the actions of intent or purpose, whatever you are aiming to do. And each of the roles then represents different roles you can have related to Azure AD. And today we are talking about guests. So the guests can actually do only this recon phase at the moment. Well, actually, that's not entirely true. You can do other stuff too, but today we are focusing on this, and especially for these two functions called invoke AAD into recon as guest and invoke AAD user enumeration as guest. So you are using this to extract the information from Azure AD and Teams. So, oh, sorry about that. Wrong button. That happens every now and then. So let's try again. So we wanted to go forward like this. So a recap of guest user permissions. So these are actually from the documentation. There's a link for that. So guest users, they can't browse information from the tenant, meaning that they can't say that, hey, give me all your users. So you can't do that. However, guest users can retrieve information about a certain object as long as they know the UPN, like for users, or GUID, like for users and groups. Then they can get the information about that object. And guest users can also read properties of groups they belong to. And well, according to documentation, they say that guest users can't view information about any other tenant object, and that's not entirely true. And I'm going to show you that to you in a couple of minutes. So what this actually means, it means that even though that you are not allowed to browse your Azure AD, you still can fetch information as long as you know the starting point, which is either a UPN or GUID of users or groups. And why the groups are important is that whenever you are creating a Teams, that is also technically a group. So if you know the Teams, let's say group GUID, you can list all the users which are inside that group. So here, what we are going to do is that we are going to first log in as this guest user. Just gonna turn that away. Okay, like we're going to log in as this guest user, and we can see all the teams the user is member of, and all the other groups the user is member of. And now that we know the group ID, we can list all the users which are inside the group. Also, we can list all the users who are inside the teams the user is member of, like this one. And then we can list these users, teams, and groups it is member of. So we can actually traverse through the Active Directory, and you can extract that information as a guest if the settings are default. So you can, of course, you can mitigate that, but we will come back to that later. So it's time for our first demo then. Okay, so I'm just going to show you shortly where is my user. That one. Yes, so this is a guest user here. Demo 0365 live, as we can see, it's a guest. And the user is member of one team called Teams Nation, what a surprise. And we can, well, we can't really see anything about this team. So it says it has two guests, but that's it. So the user is member of this one team. And now what we are going to do, we are gonna fire up the PowerShell module here. So it's right here. So this is our PowerShell window. I'm gonna first remove the module, and then I'm gonna import it again. So I've already installed it into my computer, of course, and I wanna now import that module so that I can use the commands. Okay. It's just that my computer is a little sleepy today for some reason, I don't know. And now it's going to import those scripts. And as we can see, we are using the 0.4.8 or Teams Nation edition for today's demos. And it's a little bit slow because these are actually scripts files, so they have to be compiled, and my endpoint protecting thing is going to check all those, that there's nothing bad in there. Okay, so what we need first is that we need to get an access token. So we're going to say get AAD int access token for Azure core management, and this is a kind of client ID I'm using for these kill chain functionalities. And I'm going to say save to cache, so I don't have to type my credentials all the time. Now it pops up the window and it's in Finnish. Sorry about that, but I think you know what's asked here. So my username, and then I need to provide my password. This. Great. So first, I'm going to say recon equals, invoke AAD int recon as guest. And the results are now saved to that variable called recon. When I hit enter, it's going to do something. And we can see some errors there, but that's fine. It just means that in this tenant, guest users are not allowed to do everything. But what we can see here, we can see some interesting information, like there are only 360 objects in that Azure AD tenant, like users and devices, groups, and that sort of things. It has 5 domains, and 4 of those are verified, which means that there's at least one that is not verified. So let's say, gonna say recon and domains, and let's say out grid view or OGV, and it will pop up a window here. And now it shows all the domains we have here. And is verified is the first one. So we can actually see something that we really shouldn't be seeing. So like in this case, this organization has registered a domain, but they have not verified it. So this can be like something very sensitive information, like here is a super secret new product.adatum.com. And now the guest user will see that. So that might be a problem at some point. So that's one thing that you can actually extract as a guest user, and you really can't do anything about that. So you can list all the domains, period. Okay. But the thing here is that you can list those unverified domains. Everybody in the world can list every organization's verified domains, so there's nothing new there, but as a guest user, you can list also those that are unverified. Great, so now let's try to find out what we have inside the Azure AD and Teams. So I'm going to say result equals invoke AAD int user enumeration as guest. Right. And when I hit enter, it says that, okay, it found one user, which is me. I'm logged in as that user. But if I provide, let's say, groups, it also travels to the groups I'm member of, and now we can see that I'm member of 2 groups. So what are those groups? Let's say result slash dot groups. I'm gonna say format table or just FT. I'm gonna select display name, description, and ID. So it shows that, okay, I'm a member. This guest is a member of 2 groups, and the first one is guests, and as we can see from the description, it's all guest users, and this is very alarming actually. you shouldn't have this kind of group in your organization, because now the guest users can list all the other guest users. And if you are like a big organization, you have a lot of customers, you have invited to your teams, this guest user can actually now list all the other guests in that group or in that tenant, and that's something that I wouldn't like for my guests to see. So now I can say that we start the enumeration again, but we are providing the group ID here. And now it actually shows all the users that are inside that group. So now we have all the users, all the other guest users. We can say format table and let's say user principal name. And there we are. So there's one other external user, and then there's me who's logged in, and then my other identity here. Yes, so that's one way to do that. So you can traverse to all the guest users, but now let's go back to here so that we list the groups this user is member of, and we're gonna list again those. Where was it? This one, and another one is Teams Nation, which is also like here. But as you can see, I really can't. I shouldn't be. Well, yeah, we can see the members here, so we can actually these also from the GUI. That's fine. But when I click this user Nestor, Wilkie or Wilk, I can't see any other information about this user. So I can see the groups this user is member of, and so on. But of course, we can do that with the AD internals. So let's say that we want to list now member of this group here. And we're going to select user principal name. And now I want to see all the groups this guy is member of. And I do it again here. But now I'm going to provide the username instead of the group ID. So like this. Now we can see that, oh, I need to add also the groups that it will fetch those. And now we can see that it's member of 5 groups. And again, we have this here somewhere, this. So now we know that this particular user is member of all these groups. And here we can see actually members group who has which has a description of all company members. And now when you list that one, you actually will have a list of all the members of that organization. And as a guest, you shouldn't be able to do that. Yes, so that's about that for that subject, how to extract information from Teams and Azure AD as a guest user. Well, actually, just one more thing here. So when I list these, let's say groups, there can be something like this, like project AlphaWood and project related to acquisition of Mood Group PLC. And if this would be, let's say, publicly listed organization, if your guest user can access that kind of group and its members, that could be a little bit alarming. So that could be actually something like inside information or something like that. Yes, okay, so I actually blogged about this last August, on August 7th, when I published my AAD internal skill chain. And actually very next day, I got a Twitter comment from a Tuna Geezer, who is a senior program manager for Azure AD, and he said that well, that's true. All I found is correct, and that but they are going to have some update very soon. And actually, I think it was in 1 or 2 weeks, they published a new preview feature for Azure AD, which you can actually use to mitigate this, what I showed you just just a minute ago. So let me show you that in browser also. So where's my admin? Is it that one? Yes. So now I'm logged in as an admin to this tenant. And I'm in Azure AD directory. And when I browse down here, we have a thing called, blade called user settings. And when I go down here, here is external users and manage external collaboration settings. I click there. And now we have that same setting as in my slides. So we're going to select this one. So it says that guest user access is restricted to properties and memberships of their own directory object. And it's the most restrictive setting for guest users, and I urge all of you to use this one. It's on preview, I know that, but I don't usually promote preview features, but this is a must. So now when I click save, that should be that should take effect in let's say a couple of minutes. I don't think if I run this now, it shouldn't. I think it's not going to do anything. So it's still like working, but it shouldn't be after a while. Okay, great. So then to next subject, bypassing team security policies or settings, to be more specific. Yes, so when you start Teams client or the binary client or the browser, well, actually they are technically quite similar. They are both using browsers inside. So Teams client is using some version of Chromium, as far as I know. But anyway, when you start up the Teams client, it contacts the backend, or in this case, Office 365 service, Teams service, and it says that, hey, I want to have all these settings, my settings, and of course, Cloud will send back settings. So it will send back like messaging policy, meeting policies, application policies, and so on. So all the settings this tenant has configured so that the client knows that how to behave. And of course, also when you open a specific Teams, the same settings are also fetched for each team and even for some channels, because those can have different settings. And here's an example of messaging policy. So when the team starts up and asks for settings, one thing that are included in settings is messaging policy. And here we can see that, for instance, in this tenant, we have chosen that users are not allowed to edit messages. They are not allowed to delete messages, and they are not allowed to chat. Okay, and then some piece of theory. So I'm going to tell you something about client-side security. So what this means. So actually, MITRE has this kind of common weakness in enumeration, so it's CWE, so it's not CVE, but CWE. And number 602 is about client-side enforcement of server-side security. And the definition for this is that for client security is that software is composed of a server that relies on the client to implement a mechanism that is intended to protect the server. And one of the challenges is here that an attacker can modify the client-side behavior to bypass the protection mechanisms. And I think you all know where I'm heading with this, let's say, piece of theory. And actually, about 6 months ago or so, in last October, well, it's a little bit longer than 6 months, but anyway, I published a post about my finding, because it turned out that Microsoft has chosen that Teams client is using client-side security, so they have made a design choice. I don't know why, but they have made such a choice, which also which means that some of the settings and security features are not enforced on the server side, so they are just in client side. So you tell client, for instance, that you can't edit things, and then the edit button is hidden, but you are still able to edit things. But anyway, I published this post, and this still is my most read post. So during the first 2 days, it was read by 30,000 times. So that's my let's say record so far, and it's still valid. So have a look at that too. So how to access Teams via API? So you have two options. You have the supported one, option 1, to use Microsoft Graph API. And when you use that API, you can you can be sure that all the security things are enforced on the server side, which is a good thing. And with that API, you can create and manage teams and channels, and you can at least send messages. I'm not sure about that. I'm not that familiar with the Teams API in Microsoft Graph. So if somebody knows that you can also edit and remove messages, just ping me after this session. And then we have this option 2, to use the same API that Teams is using. So Teams client has its own APIs. Well, it has multiple APIs it's using, but anyway, you can mimic the Teams client by using those APIs. And these, when you use like this way, you are actually practicing this client-side security. So some things are not enforced or checked on the server side. And here, of course, you can do anything which you can do with Teams client, such create and manage teams and channels. And you can also chat, but you can also edit those messages and you can remove those messages. So time for demo then. So let's start by again going to this browser here. This is my guest user here. And actually, I think I'm gonna need to show you my settings first. So I'm gonna go here again, and I'm gonna open Microsoft Teams admin portal. I go here to settings, and I'm gonna click external access, guest access. And from here we can see that we have turned out editing message, turned off editing messages, deleting messages, and chat functionality for guest users, which means that guest users can't chat. They can't delete messages, nor can they edit messages. And as we can see, there's no chat here anywhere, so I can start a chat with anybody. But if I open another window where we have logged in as a user, Nestor W, Adatum, Office 365 Labs.online. So here we can actually chat also with those external users or guest users. I can say, hello guest, like this, but because we have disabled that, the user really can't see that. But of course we can do this, that we copy the URL for that, and then I'm gonna just paste it here. And now as a guest user, I don't have rights to chat, but now I should be able to see the chat anyway, because this user have a right to do that. And now we can see that, yes, even though there's no chat option here, it's just hidden there, but here's a hello guest we just wrote here. But here, as we can see, administrator has disabled chat for this user. But guess what? That doesn't mean anything. So let's jump back to AAD internals. Just gonna clear the screen here. Just gonna say, do it like this. So we need again access token. but this time it's for Teams. That's 4 Teams. Yes, and we're going to save it to cache. And we're going to need to say the tenant also, because otherwise the AAD internals doesn't know which tenant to use. So I'm going to say anatom.office 365 labs.online, like this. And again, we have a pop-up window here. Syynimaa.com, gmail.com. And we are in. Yes, so now, because I already remember the guy's username, I can say send AAD in Teams messages. And recipients is going to be Nestor W anatom.office 365 labs.online. So message. Hi Nestor. Now actually switch this window here. Sorry about that. There. Now it should pop up there when I hit the enter. And as we can see, it's here. Even though the user is not allowed to chat, and we can see here that the user actually did that. So that's one thing. Okay, now when you send message, you will also receive this client message ID. And I just copied that. So now I can do also this kind of thing. So I can say client message ID. I'm going to provide that, and then I can say message. I can say that hi, not Dr. Nestori, like this. And now we can see that the message changed. So the user is not allowed to chat. User can chat. User is not allowed to edit messages. User just did that. So this kind of you need to understand that even though that those settings which are set on the tenant level, they still doesn't apply for some things. Now let's try to delete that message. Of course, as we can see, there's no edit button here. You shouldn't be able to edit that. Sorry here. So you don't have edit button and you don't have that remove button there. So now we're gonna try to delete that message. So for that, I'm gonna need to say get AAD int Teams messages. I'm gonna say select, where content like hi, not doctor. Okay, I didn't get any. Okay, well, this is actually interesting because let's try that again. Let's say star, that's much better. So remove AAD in Teams messages. So message ID. So here you can actually provide that ID of that message like this. And was there another one? Because sometimes we have duplicates. No, we just delete that one. And now let's see what happens. Well, nothing happened. So, well, actually, it was removed, and that shouldn't be possible. And I'm actually a little bit surprised about that because usually when this is plugged on tenant level, it should have said that you are not allowed to do that. But live and learn. You were able to do that, even though we have said that you shouldn't be able to do that. Okay. Now another thing. So let's go. Where's my admin window? Here's my admin window. So I'm gonna go to setting of this Teams nation. Well, actually, here's my settings. And member permissions, I have said that owners can't delete messages, and members can't delete messages, and they can't edit messages. So I'm gonna close this one, and then go to Nestor's. Yes, and now we're gonna go to the Teams. We are member of Teams Nation, right, like here. So I can say that it's a new conversation. Just move it a little bit, and when I click here, there is no edit, no delete. I can say you all. Let's say something not so like this. So that's Nestor's opinion now. Okay, now we're gonna log in as that user. So we're gonna get access token. So get AAD access token for Teams. Oh. And save to cache. Now, because we are logging in the use of that tenant, we don't need to provide the tenant. So it's going to say Nestor W. Like this, and provide the username. Okay, so now we're going to need to list messages, and I'm going to list the message where I've said you all are parts of something. So I just copy the client message. Now we can say send AAD in Teams message. Provide that ID. Like that. And now we change the, oh, sorry. Did I provide some wrong message, or why did it do that way? Just gonna try that again. Because the purpose was that it would be like editing this one here, but did I provide a wrong message ID? Well, it seems to be correct, but let's try again. Okay, I just was able to create a demo effect. Let's try that as a new conversation. So if that helps a bit, let's say that again. So I think there's actually something wrong here, because the client message ID is pretty much same for all, and that shouldn't be a case. You are a bunch of, yeah, okay, well, I got a demo effect. I need to figure out what was the reason for that, but for some reason I couldn't make my point here. I was gonna give it another try, but I don't think it's gonna work anyway. No, can't do that. Let's say if I'm able to edit that message, then yeah. So as long as the message ID is correct, you can actually do the editing, even though for some reason I wasn't able to do that here. Great. So that was it. So time for summary for the session. So guest users can extract data from Teams, and to mitigate this, you need to restrict guests users rights to minimum. So there was this new preview setting. You just set it to the most restrictive, and you're good to go. And after that, guest users can't really export that data anymore. And also, the second part was that the Teams security settings can be bypassed with direct Teams API calls. And as such, you really shouldn't keep Teams security settings as any kind of security measure. So even though that you can say that you are not allowed to edit things, you are not allowed to delete things, you can really do that. And that could be quite a big thing from compliance point of view. For, let's say, if you have a certain teams that you are discussing some compliant things where you can go and edit your answers, so they are not, the information is not anymore, let's say, what's the term here? It's not, well, it's what's the word? Well, anyway, from CIA to triangle the I part. So you can't make sure, so you can't be anymore sure that the information is correct. And it can also be problematic if you have some, let's say, issues within your organization. Two guys, they are having a row or something. They are calling others with names. And with this, you can actually change again what you have said. So it's not audit. The audit trail is not anymore there. So that's from me. So thank you. You can present questions in a minute. So the last slide. So remember to rate my session, and of course attend others. And the most important part is that follow me on Twitter. And now, if you have any questions, I'm open for those.